Okay guys, so you saw the final result at the beginning of the video, but basically we're going to be doing some 3D camera tracking and some animation in our scene to make a trapdoor opening and closing. So let's go ahead and get started. Now down below in the description is actually some links to my blend files and also the footage I actually have for this project, so if you want to go ahead and download those, feel free to do that. Anyways, first let's come up here to the VFX tab, then the motion tracking. Let's go ahead and open up our footage. Now that we have the footage imported into Blender, we'll notice that the colors are off, so let's go ahead and change that to standard. So now we're actually ready to go ahead and start 3D camera tracking. So first of all, we want to hold Control and then click to see our little tracking dot. We can hold Alt S to reveal the search area. Now this is actually too small for what we're going to do, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete that track. Then you can actually come over here to the pattern size. I'm just going to increase that a bit. And then also the search size, just going to increase that a bit. Next, we actually want to normalize this just to make the tracking a little bit easier. Then we want to come up here and set the scene frames and also prefetch the footage. So now that we have that out of the way, the last thing we got to change is our motion model. We're going to change this. For the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to stick to location, rotation, and scale. So now all we have to do is come to make sure that we're at our first frame, then hold Control and click on our dots. And then once it's in the middle of the dart, we can actually hold Control and hit T for Blender to start tracking that forward. You will notice it loses tracking at this point, but we can hit G to automatically move it, and then we just want to press Control T again. Okay, so now you can see that our actual dot has got to the end of our footage. We can actually come down here. You will notice that it is a blank frame. For some reason, when we automatically set the scene frames, it gives us one blank frame. So we just want to set this one less. Let's just do, for me, 357. So that's looking good. And now we can actually go ahead and lock this by holding Control and hitting L. So now that the tracker is locked, we can't move it around anymore and everything is looking good. So basically you just want to repeat those steps for all of these other tracking markers. I'll go ahead and do one more just to show you. Again, we're just going to hold Control, click on this, and then Control T to track forward. Once it loses its tracking, you can come down here and hit G to move it back to its spot, and then Control T again to track it till the end. One thing I quickly want to mention is that if you want to actually follow your tracker throughout your whole clip and keep it in the middle of the screen, you can hit the L button to actually have that locked to the center of the screen, and it just helps out with moving around the tracker and everything. Okay, so now I actually have all of my points tracked. We can see here. You will notice down here that all of them look pretty good. All of them kind of stick around together. So all of that is looking good. Now let's actually try to solve our camera motion. Let's come to the Solve tab. We're just going to hit keyframe right here, and then we're going to refine the focal length K1 and K2. Okay, so I got a solve error of 8.5 pixels, and that is actually really good, so I don't need to add any more tracks or anything. But if for any reason your solve error is greater than mine, then I would add some more tracking markers around, or maybe try to refine the existing tracking markers. So now let's actually go ahead and set up our scene. Just going to come to set up tracking scene up here. Going to make this the origin. And then I'm going to make a floor, so just going to select 3 of these points and then hit floor. Right there, so that is looking good. And then let's set the scale. Just select 2 of those and set the scale like that. And so up here I can see that that kind of roughly follows my floor, so I am happy with that. Okay, so now let's actually deal with making our hole and trapdoor. So let's come to the layout tab. I'm going to go ahead and delete the cube, not the plane. Also this light, we don't really need this. And also we need to do some things that Blender automatically set up. So first of all, let's delete this background collection. We don't really need that. And then the background view layer, we can actually go ahead and delete that too. Also in the compositing tab, let's just delete this node right here and then these 3 nodes, and then just plug this image socket into the alpha over. Now coming back to the layout tab, let's go into the camera view. And then to view our actual markers better, we can go into the wireframe mode. So let's actually size this up a bit just so we have a little bit more space. And then I am going to hit Control R to add a loop cut. We're just going to add that there. I'm going to add another one like this. I'm basically just trying to make a little square in the middle where our actual tracking dots are. So that is looking good. Now let's go into face select mode. I'm going to select the middle face like that and then hit E to extrude, and I'm just going to push that all the way down there. And now let's actually make the trapdoor, because if we go into solid view now, we can see that it's basically just a hole that we've created, but we actually want this to be covered up as well. So we're just going to go into edge select mode, and then just select these 4 edges right here. And then we can press F to make a face like that. But with this still selected, we actually want this to be a separate object from this original object that we have. So we can hit P to separate, and then we want to separate by selection. So now we actually have 2 objects we can see up here. We can just go and select this one we just created, this ground 0. I'm going to name this trapdoor, just so we can separate the 2. So now if we actually come and go into wireframe, you'll notice that it's just one plane, but we actually want this to be kind of a cube. So what we can do is go into edit mode, select all the faces, and then we're just going to extrude this down. I'm going to say around there is looking good. Now if we come back out into the object mode, we can actually see if we rotate it, it rotates weirdly on this little axis right here. And that's actually because we have our origin point set to be here. So we need it to basically be on this little portion over here. So a way we're going to do that is to actually go into edit mode. We're going to hit A to select all the faces. Let's go into the wireframe mode just to make it a bit easier. Now we can actually go to the side view by hitting 1 on our numpad, 3 on our numpad, and then we're basically just gonna hit G and then hit Y to move it on the Y axis right there at the corner. And then we also need to GZ to move it on the Z axis, just so it's right there. So now if we come out of edit mode and go into solid view, we can actually see if we rotate it now, it rotates on that, acting as a hinge, so that is what we want. Now you will notice that it's positioned our trapdoor where it's no longer on the floor. So an easy way to fix that is to just come and zoom all the way in over here, and you kind of just want to get it as close as possible. Try to be as zoomed in as you can. It doesn't really matter if it's exactly on it for what we're doing, but we do want to as close as possible, and then just move it back on the y-axis as well. Okay, so now we have our trapdoor back on our actual plane, so that is looking good. Now all we need to do is to actually texture everything. So first of all, let's deal with our hole and not our trapdoor, so I'm just going to hit H to hide our trapdoor real quick. First of all, let's have this selected, then go to the material. Let's add a new material. This is going to be the hole material, but we also need another material because this little ground area right here needs to be able to hide this little hole right here, because right now if we actually have this and then hide these, you will see that we can actually see this hole going down. So let's unhide those by hitting Alt H. So now what we need to do is actually select all these faces up here and add its own material to it, separate from the material on the hole. So to do that, let's just go into face select mode, hold shift, and then just click on all of these faces up here. Then we're just going to come over here, add a new material. I'm going to call this holdout. And then what you want to do is hit assign right here. That's basically going to assign this material to whatever you have selected. So now if I come to this face, you'll notice that it's on the hold texture, and then this face is on the holdout. So now let's actually play around with some of these. For the holdout, instead of principled BSDF, we're just going to simply select holdout right here. So now if we go into rendered view, you will notice that it basically creates a blank little space out here. It is incorrect, however, because we actually don't have the film transparency turned on. So to change that, let's go to the render properties, film, and then transparent. While we're here, let's go ahead and go to the cycles render engine. So cycles, GPU compute, adaptive sampling, denoising on the viewport, light paths. I like to change mine down to 3, and then reflective and refractive caustics should be turned off. Next, on the performance, since I'm rendering on a GPU, we're going to go ahead and set that to 512 by 512. But if you're rendering on a CPU, make sure to set that to 64 by 64. And then the view transform, let's just leave it on standard for now. You'll see why in a little bit. Okay, so now everything is looking correct in this window. So let's actually come back to the materials. Let's go ahead and play around with our actual texturing for the hole. So we just want to select this whole texture right here. Go to the shading tab. So we can actually see the shading of it. Now let's actually plug in our rock texture. Now I actually downloaded this texture from Texture Haven. The links to both the textures I use are in the description below. But Texture Haven is an awesome place to download a bunch of textures. All you want to do is just go to the texture that you want to download, go to all maps, and then hit this PNG, whatever resolution you want. Okay, so with that now out of the way, let's go up to Edit, Preferences. Then we want to make sure in the add-on section that we have Node Wrangler installed. So just make sure that this is checked down here. So once we have that installed, we can hold Shift, Control, and then hit T. This will bring up this menu. We want to go to wherever we downloaded our texture. Mine is right here. And then just drag all these and hit Principled Texture Setup. This basically automatically sets up our texture. So let's go ahead and select these faces in here. Just going to select all the faces that we want the rock to be on. And then we're just going to hit U to unwrap. And then we're going to go ahead and hit Cube projection like that. You might notice that your texture actually isn't popping up, and that's actually because when Blender made our scene by default, it set this object to be a shadow catcher object. So we want to go ahead and change that. In the object properties, we can go to visibility, and then in this mask we want to turn shadow catcher off. So now you can actually see we have our rock texture. It is a little too big, so what we can do is go ahead and add in a value node just to be plugged into the scale, just so we can control all of them at the same time, and then just scale that up a bit until we get a result that we like. Okay, so that is looking good now. We can see that we actually have our rock texture in. We will notice that it is kind of dark, so let's go ahead and just add in a simple sun lamp to our scene by going to light sun like that, and then let's just drag this until it looks good in our scene. Okay, so now that we have our sun in our scene, we can see that this texture is looking really nice. So now we are actually done with this plain texture. Now we have to move on to the trapdoor. So let's just Alt H to unhide that and see how that looks. Again, this is set to be a shadow catcher, so we need to change that in object properties, then change that off. Now here comes the tricky part, and that is actually having the carpet texture onto our top face. Let's go ahead and hide our little hole object right here just so we can see it. First of all, we want to select this, go into this tab. Let's make a wood texture first, because these faces right here are going to be our wood, and the top face is going to be carpet. So with our wood texture selected, let's just do the same process as earlier. Select our Principled BSDF, Shift Control T to add in textures, and then just go to our wood textures, select all those, hit Principled Setup. So that is looking a bit blurry and everything, so what you can do is go into edit mode, A to select everything, and then go to cube projection. Okay, so that is looking good. Now let's go ahead and add in another material. So we're going to hit plus right here. I'm going to name this carpet. And then like before, let's go into edit mode, select this top face that we want to be our carpet, select the carpet material right here and hit assign. Now for our top surface of our carpet material, we actually need a clean plate. Now how I got my own clean plate, and you need to do this as well, is to go to a frame. I just selected my very first frame, and then you need to go to the compositing tab and plug this movie clip into the composite. Now once you've rendered out the image, you will get this. You can still see that we have some of the dots and everything in our scene, but basically you just need to remove those. There are many ways to actually remove those dots and everything. For me, I just use Photoshop. There are many tutorials out there of how to remove those, but if you've downloaded my footage, I have included my own clean plate, and basically it's the same image, but now without the actual dots on the screen. It's just the carpet. So now that is looking good. Now let's go back into Blender itself. Make sure this is plugged back in. We just did that for the sake of that part. Go out into the shading tab. Now let's actually bring that image in. Let's make a image node, then open that. And then right here in that folder, you'll see a clean plate, PNG. You just want to open that up. And we actually don't need the Principled BSDF for this part, so we're just going to go ahead and delete that. And then we want to plug in this color to the surface of our material output. Now you will notice that it doesn't really match our scene, and so a way we're going to change that is to actually go into edit mode, make sure that top face is selected and you are in the camera view. That is the most important part. Then we're just going to hit U, project from view. Okay, so that basically projected our clean plate PNG onto our sphere from where we were looking, and since we were looking through the camera, it displayed it in the correct way. You will notice it's a little distorted. This is just something weird that project from view does. So what we need to do is add a quick subdivision surface modifier. Instead of this, you want to do simple and just change this all the way up, hit apply, like that, and then we just need to go back, have all these selected, still hit U, and then project from view, and that should have fixed it. Okay, so let's actually render out an image real quick. Let's hit Alt H to unhide our actual ground. So let's go ahead and render an image. So you should see nothing is here, and that is actually good because we do actually have our plane in the scene. So if I come over here and go to the foreground, we can actually see that our plane is in the scene, but it's actually being blended into the actual ground. So that is what we want. We can go ahead and exit out of here. Now let's work on some of the animation for the trapdoor. Let's come to the layout section. Now you want to find the place where you actually want your trapdoor to spring up. For me, I'm going to do around frame 40. So we just need to set a location keyframe right here. And then I'm going to go to, let's say 65, and then just go to the side view by hitting 1 or 3, then hitting G and moving that up in the Z axis like that until it's kind of flat with the floor. It doesn't have to be perfect again, but we're just trying to get it as close as possible. And then let's just set another location keyframe. So now that we have the door rising up, we also need it to rotate. So we're just going to make sure, let's say it's frame 53 for me. So on frame 53, I'm going to set a rotation keyframe by hitting I. And instead of location, we want to do rotation. And then I want to come over here, let's say to 80, and then just rotate along the x-axis until, let's say 90 degrees, just so it's up like that. And then let's hit I, rotation keyframe. Okay, so now let's see how that looks. We can scroll out. We can see that it starts to raise up, and then at the middle of it, it kind of starts to flip up itself, and then it stops right here. So all of that is looking good. Let's actually come to the camera view to see how it looks from the camera and go to rendered view. So that is looking good. The one thing you will notice, however, is that there is no shadow actually on this little ground here, and that kind of throws the illusion off a bit. So how to add that? We're going to go ahead and go into solid view again. We're going to select the ground plane we actually have, our hole. We're going to go into edit mode. We're just going to select all of these top faces right here, like that. And now we actually want to go ahead and duplicate this, so we can hold Shift D to duplicate all of these things. It's still attached to this ground object, so we need to separate it again. Hit P, then selection again. Now it's its own plane right here, so we can just go ahead and go into object to select that. I'm going to rename mine to shadow, and now it's actually on the same space as our actual holdout texture. So what we need to do is come to the side right here, and ever so slightly we're just going to move that up in the Z direction a tiny bit, just so it's right above our actual plane layer. Now for this, we can go ahead and get rid of both of the hole and the holdout material from this. This we actually need to be a shadow capture object. So we're going to come up to the object properties, go down to the visibility, and now we're going to change shadow catcher to be on. Now let's just go ahead and render out another image to see how that looks. Okay, so now we can actually see our shadow in our scene. So that is looking a bit better. So that is actually everything finished. Now all we need to do is actually export our final video. So let's go to the export settings, make sure your resolution and frame rate match, which they do. And then this output properties, we're going to come over here and set a new folder for where we want all of our PNG sequences to end up in. Once we have all of those files saved into one folder, we can go ahead and make sure that file format is PNG, RGBA, and then compression is down to 0%, and then we can go ahead and render the animation. Okay, so my render has finished. You will notice that there are all these PNG images. So if you actually want to put this into a video format, an easy way to do that is just to come to the video editing tab. Make sure you're on your first frame, then go ahead and add in a image sequence, and then locate wherever you have all your image sequences. Just select all those, add image strip. Blender will automatically put them in a image sequence. And then in the output properties, all we have to do is just specify a new location to save our file. Then instead of the PNG file format, we're going to do FFmpeg video, then MP4, and then high quality for the output quality, and then we can render the animation again. Okay guys, so here is the final result we got for this tutorial. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section below. But anyways, again, we have the footage linked in the description, also the blend files if you want to go ahead and download that. Also, we have a Patreon and Discord if you'd like to join those. Links to those are in the description below. But anyways guys, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys later. Peace.